Admiral Jinwoo Kim stood in the massive chamber of the Galactic Council station. The room was so big that clouds formed near the ceiling. Around him, alien beings from across the galaxy sat in their special seats, each one designed for their strange bodies. The Valdorians looked like walking crystals, tall and sharp, with light dancing through their transparent skin. The Ntheki floated in glass containers filled with purple gas, their forms shifting like smoke. The Thraxis clicked and buzzed, their insect bodies covered in hard shells that gleamed under the station's lights. Jin Woo felt small next to these creatures. Captain So-Young Park stood on his right, her hand resting on her weapon. Dr. Hyun-Sik Lee was on his left, carrying a datapad with information about Earth's demands. All three humans wore simple gray uniforms that looked plain compared to the colorful robes and armor of the aliens. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They kept peace by being stronger than everyone else. Their ships could destroy planets. Their weapons could turn stars into dust. Every species in the galaxy feared them, except for one small group of newcomers from a planet called Earth. Counselor Prime Veltar rose from his crystal throne. When he moved, his body made sounds like wind chimes. His voice came through the translation device, cold and sharp like breaking glass. "The humans have requested time to speak," he said. "We will listen, though we wonder what such a young species could possibly teach us." Other council members made sounds that their translators turned into laughter. The Thraxis war speaker Clixandra clicked her mandibles together, making a noise like breaking sticks. The Gorthak representatives snorted through their pig-like noses. Jinwoo stepped forward. His boots made small sounds on the smooth floor, but in the huge chamber they seemed as loud as thunder. He had practiced this moment for months, but standing, here now, he felt the weight of his entire species on his shoulders. "Honored Council," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We come to you today with a simple request. Stop taking resources from planets in human space." The chamber, filled with alien sounds of amusement. A Valdorian near the back made a noise like crystal bells ringing. Even the serious Ntheki seemed to ripple with what might have been laughter. Veltar leaned forward on his throne. "Human space?" he asked. "You control 12 star systems. We control 12,000. Your fastest ships take months to travel between stars. Ours can cross the galaxy in days. What gives you the right to call any part of space yours?" So-Young stepped forward, but Jin Woo held up his hand to stop her. He had expected this response. The Council saw humans as children playing with toys, not as equals who deserved respect. "The Kepler 442 system," Jin Woo continued. "Your mining ships are strip mining the fourth planet. That world has life on it. Early life, but life nonetheless. Your machines are killing an entire world of creatures that could become intelligent in a few million years." Dr. Hyun-Sik Lee held up his datapad, showing pictures of the small creatures living on the planet. They looked like tiny lizards, but their brain scans showed patterns that suggested they might develop intelligence someday. War speaker Clixandra stood up, her 6 legs clicking on the floor. "Millions of years," she buzzed. "We need those minerals, now. Those creatures may never become intelligent. Even if they do, that is not our problem." Other council members made agreeing sounds. To them, the idea of waiting millions of years to protect creatures that might never become smart was foolish. Jinwoo nodded as if he understood their position. "We thought you might say that, so we have prepared a different kind of request." He pulled out a small device and pressed a button. The chamber's main screen lit up, showing the Kepler 442 system. Mining ships moved around the planet like metal insects, tearing apart the surface to get to the valuable metals underneath. "Withdraw your ships from that system within 72 hours, Jinwoo said. His voice was calm, but every alien in the chamber could hear the strength behind his words. "If you do not, we will show you why you should reconsider your opinion of humanity." The chamber went quiet for a moment. Then the laughter started again, louder this time. Some aliens were laughing so hard that their translation devices could barely keep up. Veltar's crystal body flashed with bright colors, a sign of great amusement among his people. "Are you threatening us, human?" "No," Jinwoo replied. "We are making you a promise," A promise of what? Asked Anathiki, its gas form swirling with what looked like anger. Your entire fleet could not scratch the paint on one of our ships. Your weapons are toys. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. Jinwoo smiled. It was not a happy smile. That is what you think. War Speaker Clixandra stood again, her mandibles spread wide in a threatening display. The mining operation in Kepler 442 is protected by 6 of our best ships. Each one could destroy your homeworld. Do you really think you can challenge us? We think, Jinwoo said quietly, that you have made some wrong assumptions about us. He gestured to his companions, and the 3 humans began walking toward the exit. Every eye in the chamber followed them as they moved. 72 hours, Jinwoo called back without turning around. After that, mathematics takes over. As the humans left the chamber, the alien laughter started again, but not everyone was laughing. Dr. Min-ho Cho, a Korean scientist who worked for the council studying alien species, watched the humans go, with worried eyes. Unlike the other council members, Min-ho had studied human history carefully. He knew about their wars, their strategies, their way of thinking about problems. He had read about human battles where small forces defeated large ones through clever planning and patience. Most importantly, he knew something that the other council members had forgotten. In all of human history, when humans made threats about war, they were never bluffing. As the chamber returned to its regular business, Min-ho quietly made his way to his office. He had 72 hours to figure out what the humans were really planning. Something told him that the galaxy was about to change forever. Outside the station, the 3 humans boarded their small ship. It looked old and slow compared to the sleek council vessels around it. But as they prepared to leave, Jinwoo allowed himself a small smile. The council thought they knew everything about human capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 71 hours had passed since the human ultimatum. In the Kepler 442 system, the council mining operation continued as if nothing had happened. 6 warships floated in space around the dying planet, their weapons ready for any threat. Fleet. Commander Narration sat in the captain's chair of the human ship Defiant. The bridge was small and cramped compared to council vessels. The walls were gray metal instead of fancy crystals or flowing energy fields. Everything looked old and simple, like tools built by people who could not afford better. But Nari knew the truth about her ship. Under its plain appearance, the Defiant carried technology that no council race had ever imagined. Technology built by humans who understood that sometimes the best weapon was the one your enemy never saw coming. Commander, called Chief Engineer Wonbin Ko from his station. All systems show green. The packages are ready for deployment. Weapons Officer Da-un, Young turned in her seat. I have targeting solutions on all 6 council ships plus the mining platforms. The math checks out perfectly. Nari nodded. Everything had been calculated down to the smallest detail. The positions of the enemy ships, the timing of their patrol, patterns, even the way their shields would try to adjust to incoming threats. Human computers had run millions of simulations of this exact moment. Open a channel to the mining supervisor, Nari ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Overlord Biamtok. The Gorthak looked like a giant pig wearing a military uniform. His small eyes showed more amusement than concern as he stared at the human ship on his own screens. One ship? Biamtok snorted, his voice making wet sounds through the translator. The mighty human fleet sends one tiny ship to threaten us? I have seen fishing boats that look more dangerous. Nari studied the alien's face. Like all council races, the Gorthak thought in terms of bigger weapons, stronger shields, faster engines. They could not imagine warfare that did not depend on those things. Overlord Bamtok, Nari said calmly. I am Commander Nari Yoon of the Terran Defense Force. This is your final warning. Leave this system immediately. Bamtok laughed so hard that his whole body shook. Final warning? Little human, my shields could stop anything your pathetic ship could fire. My weapons could turn you into space dust before you could blink. You think so? Nari asked. I know so, Bamtok replied. Your fusion engines are 1,000 years behind our quantum drives. Your metal ships are toys compared to our energy barriers. You have nothing that could threaten us. Nari leaned forward in her chair. Overlord, you have made one very important mistake. What mistake? You assume that we think like you do. Without waiting for a response, Nari cut the communication. She looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Each one was calm and ready, like surgeons about to begin an operation they had practiced hundreds of times. Signal all stations, Nari ordered. Begin deployment. To the council ships, it looked like the human vessel was releasing garbage into space. Thousands of tiny objects spread out from the Defiant like metallic dust. The particles were so small that the council sensors barely noticed them as they drifted through the system. Bimitok stared at his screens in confusion. What are they doing? Are they trying to blind our sensors with scrap metal? His weapons officer, a young Gorthak named Kreltok, shook his head. Sir, the objects are too small to cause any damage. They are not even moving fast enough to dent our hulls. Maybe they are trying to create some kind of interference field, suggested the shield operator. Bemtok grunted with amusement. Humans, always trying to be clever when they should just build bigger guns. But on the Defiant, the crew was watching something the council could not see. Each tiny particle contained a fusion reactor smaller than a grain of sand, a computer chip smaller than a human hair, and guidance systems built from materials that most species thought were impossible to manufacture. Deployment complete, reported Dayun. All packages are in position and awaiting activation signal. Nari opened the communication channel again, broadcasting on all frequencies so that every ship in the system could hear her words. This is Commander Nari Yoon of the Terran Defense Force, she announced. You have had your warning. You have had your time. What happens next is not personal. It is mathematics. Bamtok appeared on the screen again, his pig-like face red with anger. Mathematics? What are you talking about, human? Simple math, Nari replied. You have 6 ships. We have 10 billion weapons. The equation works out badly for you. Before Bimemtok could respond, Nari gave the order that changed everything. Activate all packages. Throughout the Kepler 442 system, 10 billion tiny objects came to life at exactly the same moment. Each grain of metallic dust suddenly became a miniature missile, guided by quantum computers and powered by fusion reactors that released more energy than some stars. The council ships did not have time to react. Their sensors, designed to track large objects moving at normal speeds, could not follow weapons smaller than insects that moved at impossible velocities. Their shields, built to stop energy beams and solid projectiles, offered no protection against swarms of microscopic attackers that could slip through any barrier. The first council ship died in 3 seconds. Its hull simply came apart as billions of tiny weapons ate through it like acid. The second ship lasted 4 seconds, but only because its captain tried to activate emergency shields that did nothing to stop the attack. Bemtok's flagship was the last to fall. As his ship shook apart around him, he stared at his screens in horror. The humans had not fired a single large weapon. They had not used energy beams or missiles or anything that looked like traditional warfare. Instead, they had turned cosmic dust into death itself. Impossible, Bamatok whispered as his bridge filled with sparks and smoke. This is impossible. But the Defiant's crew knew it was not impossible. It was just a different way of thinking about war. While the council races built bigger and stronger, weapons humans had learned to make smaller and smarter ones. The mining platforms died next, their metal structures coming apart like sand castles in a storm. In less than 20 seconds, the entire council operation in Kepler 442 had been reduced to floating debris and expanding clouds of gas. Nari sat back in her chair and watched the destruction on her screens. There was no joy on her face, only the satisfaction of a job completed correctly. Signal Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them the demonstration was successful. On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, council leaders watched the recorded transmission of what had happened in Kepler 442. The videos spread through their military networks like wildfire, showing the impossible destruction of 6 warships and dozens of mining platforms by a single human vessel. In the Great Council chambers, emergency sessions were called. Military experts analyzed the recordings frame by frame, trying to understand how such a thing could have happened. But no matter how many times they watched the videos, the answer was always the same. The humans had done something that should have been impossible. They had turned the very dust of space into weapons more dangerous than anything the Council had ever built. And if they could do it once, they could do it again. The emergency council session began 12 hours after the destruction of the Kepler 442 mining operation. Representatives from every major species had gathered in the Great Chamber, their voices creating a symphony of fear and confusion that the translation devices struggled to handle. Dr. Min-Ho Cho stood at the center of the chamber, holding a data pad filled with information that would change everything. As the Council's chief expert on human behavior, he had spent years studying Earth's strange species. Now, as he looked at the faces around him, he realized that none of them had truly understood what they were dealing with. Counselor Prime Veltar called for silence with a sound like breaking glass. His crystal body was flickering with colors that showed deep worry among his people. Dr. Cho, Veltar said, his voice echoing through the chamber, you have studied the humans longer than anyone. Explain to us how they destroyed 6 of our finest warships with what appeared to be space dust. Min-Ho activated his data pad, and the chamber's screens filled with images of the attack. The footage showed the human ship releasing thousands of tiny particles, followed by the complete destruction of the Council fleet. The answer, Min-Ho began, is that we have been thinking about humans all wrong. We saw their simple technology and slow ships, and we assumed they thought like us. We were mistaken. War Speaker Clixandra clicked her mandibles impatiently. Get to the point, scientist. How do they make weapons out of dust? Min-Ho touched his data pad again and new images appeared on the screens. These showed human factories, human research centers, and human ships from the past 50 years. They did not make weapons out of dust, Min-Ho explained. They made dust that was always weapons. Each particle contained a fusion reactor, a guidance system, and a computer. Together, they created a swarm intelligence that could think and act as one. The chamber filled with confused sounds. A Netheki representative, its gas form swirling with agitation, spoke through its translator. Impossible. Fusion reactors cannot be made so small. The energy requirements alone would be enormous. Min-Ho nodded. That is what we thought. But humans do not think about energy the same way we do. Look at this. The screens showed human space stations orbiting their sun, massive structures that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. Solar collection, arrays, Min-Ho continued. For the past 30 years, humans have been building these around their star. We thought they were just trying to gather energy for their primitive civilization. We were wrong. They were powering weapons factories. He touched his data pad again, and the images changed to show the inside of human manufacturing centers. Billions of tiny machines worked together, building microscopic devices at a speed that seemed impossible. Nano-manufacturing, Min-Ho explained. While we were building bigger factories to make bigger weapons, humans were building smaller factories to make smaller weapons. Weapons so small that our sensors could not detect them as threats. Veltar leaned forward on his throne. But the technology required for such precision. Our own nanoscience is centuries ahead of theirs. Is it? Min-Ho asked. He activated a new set of files on his datapad. These are human patent applications filed with our own council database over the past 20 years. Documents that we approved and cataloged without understanding what they really were. The screens filled with technical drawings and scientific papers. At first glance, they looked like boring industrial processes and academic research. But as Min-Ho highlighted certain sections, the truth became clear. Improved 3D printing techniques, Min-Ho read from one document. Medical nanotechnology for cellular repair. Asteroid mining efficiency protocols. Advanced materials science for space construction. He looked around the chamber at the increasingly worried faces of the council members. Every single one of these documents contains the technical specifications for the weapons they used against us. They sent us the blueprints and we filed them away as harmless civilian technology. The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Several representatives tried to speak at once, their translators creating a chaos of overlapping voices. Silence, Veltar commanded. his crystal body flashing with bright light. "Continue, Dr. Cho." Minho activated another set of files. "But the weapons are only part of the revelation. Look at this." The screens now showed star maps of Council space, marked with thousands of tiny dots. Each dot represented a location where human ships had visited over the past 50 years. "Human exploration missions," Minho said. "Human trade delegations, human scientific expeditions. We welcomed them all, thinking they were just curious newcomers trying to learn about the galaxy." He highlighted certain dots on the map. Every single one of these visits was the intelligence gathering operation. They were not exploring our space, they were mapping it for war. A Gorthak representative snorted through his pig-like nose. "Mapping for war? Their ships were unarmed civilian vessels." "Were they?" Minho asked. He brought up sensor records from human ship visits to various council worlds. "Look more carefully at these scans." The data showed human ships releasing small objects during their visits, objects that the council sensors had dismissed as waste or debris. "Surveillance networks," Minho explained. "Every major council system now contains human monitoring devices, placed there by ships we thought were harmless visitors. They have been watching us, learning our patrol routes, our defense patterns, our military capabilities." The terrible truth began to sink in among the council members. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for war while pretending to seek friendship. Every interaction had been calculated, every mission planned, every document filed with specific purposes. Intelligence Director Sang-Wook Han entered the chamber at that moment, accompanied by a small human diplomatic team. Unlike the humble visitors who had come before, these humans walked with the confidence of people who held all the advantages. "Dr. Cho is correct," Sang-Wook announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "But his analysis is incomplete." Veltar's crystal form flickered with what might have been fear. "What do you mean, human?" Sang-Wook activated a portable hologram projector, filling the air above the chamber with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of red dots appeared throughout council space, marking human surveillance devices and weapons caches. "What Dr. Cho has not told you," Sang-Wook said calmly, "is that the demonstration at Kepler 442 was the smallest possible example of our capabilities. We could have destroyed that fleet with a single particle instead of billions. We used more than necessary to make sure you understood the message." He gestured to the hologram, and new images appeared showing human weapons scattered throughout the galaxy like seeds waiting to sprout. For 5 decades, every human ship that entered council space carried payloads of these weapons. Your own. Security forces helped us distribute them, thinking they were scanning harmless civilian vessels. War Speaker Clixandra stood on her 6 legs, her mandibles spread in a threat display. "Are you saying you have weapons already in place throughout our space?" "Not weapons," Sang-Wook replied. "Solutions. Mathematical solutions to military problems that we hoped we would never need to implement." Dr. Ji-Woo Shin, a human physicist, stepped forward and activated her own data pad. The hologram changed to show detailed technical specifications. "Every council military technology has been analyzed and countered," she announced. "Valdorian crystal armor can be shattered by resonance frequencies we identified 30 years ago. Thraxis swarm tactics can be defeated by algorithms we developed from studying your own military exercises. Netheki phase-shifting technology becomes useless when tracked by quantum sensors we have already deployed." The chamber fell completely silent. Every species represented there realized that their greatest military secrets were not secret at all. Sang-Wook looked around at the alien faces, seeing the exact mix of fear and respect that humanity had been planning to create. "The question, now," he said quietly, "is whether we can find a way to coexist that does not require us to demonstrate these solutions on a larger scale." Supreme War Marshal Quinthera stood in the command center of the largest warship ever built. The Eternal Dominion was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of over 3,000 council ships, all moving toward one target, Earth. This was the largest military force in galactic history. Ships from 17 different species had joined together for one purpose: to crush humanity before their dangerous technology could spread further. "Status report," Quinthera commanded, her insect voice clicking through the translation system. Her tactical officer, a Valdorian named Zekthel, gestured to the main display. "All fleets have reached their assigned positions. The humans appear to be in full retreat. Their ships are fleeing toward the outer planets of their system." Quinthera studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans had exactly 12 operational warships, all of them running away from the approaching Council armada. Their homeworld was transmitting desperate requests for negotiation, offering to surrender if the Council would show mercy. "Cowards," muttered Admiral Brockmar, a Gorthak officer still angry about the loss of the Kepler 4I-42 fleet. "They can strike from hiding like insects, but they run when faced with real military power." But Quinthara was more careful than her subordinates. She had studied the human attack recordings hundreds of times. The destruction of 6 warships by invisible weapons was not the work of cowards. "Maintain defensive formations," she ordered. "Their weapon deployment takes time. If we advance quickly and stay in tight groups, they cannot position enough of their dust weapons to threaten us." The Council fleet moved through space like a metal storm, thousands of ships in perfect formation. Their combined shields created energy barriers that could stop almost any attack. Their weapons, all pointed forward, were ready to destroy anything that appeared in front of them. As they approached the inner solar system, human ships continued to flee. Some headed toward Mars, others toward the asteroid belt. A few seemed to be trying to hide behind Earth's moon. "They are scattering like frightened animals," observed War Speaker Clixandra from her own flagship. "Should we pursue the fleeing ships or focus on their homeworld?" "Focus on Earth," Quinthera decided. "Once we control their planet, the scattered ships will have nowhere to run." But in a hidden command center buried deep in the asteroid belt, Admiral Sujin Kwak was watching the Council advance with calm satisfaction. Every movement of the enemy fleet had been predicted by human computers years in advance. "Status of all defensive positions?" she asked her tactical officer. "All packages deployed and activated," came the reply. "Mars orbital field is ready. Asteroid belt network is online. Inner system perimeter is armed and waiting." Sujin nodded. The Council fleet was walking into the most elaborate trap in human history, and they had no idea what was waiting for them. The retreating human ships were not running in panic. Each one was following a precise course that would lead the Council forces through carefully prepared kill zones. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every abandoned human station had been converted into a weapons platform over the past 5 years. "Admiral," reported her communications officer, "President Taemin Park is broadcasting from Earth. He is asking the Council fleet to accept humanity's surrender." "Good," Sujin replied. "The more they believe we are defeated, the deeper they will come into the trap." The Council fleet reached Mars orbit and found what appeared to be a desperate last stand. A few human ships had taken defensive positions around the red planet, their weapons pointed uselessly at the approaching armada. "Pathetic," Quinthara muttered. "A dozen ships against 3,000. End this quickly." But as the Council fleet moved into attack formation, something strange began to happen. The space around Mars seemed to shimmer as if the very vacuum was alive. "What is that?" asked Admiral Brockmar, staring at his sensors. Before anyone could answer, the trap sprung. Mars itself had been converted into a weapons platform. Its entire surface was covered with launch tubes that had been disguised as mining operations. In a single moment, billions of the tiny human weapons erupted from the planet like metallic rain. But these were not the same weapons used at Kepler 442. These were larger, smarter, and designed specifically to hunt Council ships. They moved through space in coordinated swarms, each group targeting a different enemy vessel. The Council fleet's defensive formations meant nothing against weapons that were too small to target and too numerous to count. Ship after ship began to suffer cascade failures as microscopic attackers ate through their hulls like acid. "Impossible," Quinthera shouted as her own ship shuddered under the assault. "Mars is a dead planet. It cannot support manufacturing facilities." Her science officer, a nervous Nitheki, was studying the sensor readings with growing horror. "Marshal, the weapons are not being manufactured on Mars. They were already there, waiting in the soil and rock. The entire planet has been converted into a single massive weapons system." The revelation struck the Council forces like a physical blow. The humans had not just prepared for this battle, they had rebuilt an entire world specifically to fight it. As more ships began to die, Quinthera realized that her fleet was not facing a desperate last stand. They were being systematically hunted by an enemy that had turned their own solar system into a weapon. "All ships retreat," she ordered. "Fall back to minimum safe distance." But it was too late. The human weapons were not just attacking the Council fleet, they were hurting it, driving the surviving ships deeper into the solar system where even more traps waited. The asteroid belt exploded into activity as thousands of rocks revealed themselves to be camouflaged weapons platforms. Each asteroid contained enough firepower to destroy a dozen Council ships, and there were millions of asteroids. Jupiter's moons opened like flowers, revealing launch bays that had been carved out over decades of secret preparation. Saturn's rings turned out to be made partly of human weapons disguised as ice and rock. The Council fleet found itself surrounded by an enemy they could not see, fighting weapons they could not target, in a solar system that had been converted into the largest killing field in galactic history. "How?" Quinthera whispered as her flagship's shields failed and tiny attackers began eating through the hull. "How did they do all this without us knowing?" The answer came from her own communication system, as a transmission from Admiral Sujin Kwok reached every surviving Council ship. "You spent 50 years watching us," the human admiral said calmly. "You saw our mining operations, our construction projects, our scientific expeditions. You cataloged every ship we built, every technology we developed, every resource we gathered." Quinthera stared at the image of the human woman on her screen, seeing no anger or hatred in her eyes, only the professional satisfaction of a predator whose hunt was nearly complete. "What you did not understand," Sujin continued, "is that everything we did was for this moment. Every project had a military purpose. Every mission was part of the preparation. We were not building a civilization. We were building a weapon." As her ship began to break apart around her, Quinthera finally understood the terrible truth. Humanity had never been trying to join galactic civilization. They had been preparing to replace it with something of their own design. The last thing she saw before her flagship died was the Earth itself, still broadcasting surrender offers while its children systematically destroyed the greatest military force in galactic history. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council chambers looked very different. The great seats that had once held the most powerful beings in the galaxy now seemed smaller somehow. The aliens who sat in them spoke more quietly, moved more carefully, and watched the humans at the center of the chamber with a mixture of fear and respect. Secretary General Ye-Jin Lim stood where Admiral Jin Woo Kim had once delivered humanity's ultimatum. But everything had changed since that day. The humans no longer came as petitioners asking for favors. They came as the new reality that everyone else had to adjust to. "Honored delegates," Ye-Jin began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "We gather today to discuss the new regulations for interaction with developing species." Her words were simple and polite, but every alien in the chamber understood the threat behind them. The humans were not asking for new rules, they were announcing them. Counselor Prime Veltar, his crystal form noticeably dimmer than before, leaned forward on his throne. "These regulations would severely limit our ability to gather resources from uninhabited systems. Systems that contain life are not uninhabited," Ye-Jin replied calmly. "They are simply inhabited by species that you do not consider important enough to protect." Dr. Min-Ho Cho, now serving as the Council's chief advisor on human affairs, activated a holographic display showing the new boundary lines that humanity had drawn through the galaxy. Large sections of space were now marked as protected zones where no Council species could operate without human approval. "These boundaries encompass over 4,000 star systems," protested War Speaker Kliktara, who had replaced the dead Quinthara as the Thraxis military leader. Some of them contain resources that are essential to our economies. Then you will need to find alternatives, Ye Jin said. Or you can develop trade relationships with the species that live in those systems once they become advanced enough for contact. The chamber filled with the alien sounds of frustration and anger. For 3,000 years, the council races had taken what they needed from weaker species without asking permission. The idea of waiting for primitive creatures to develop technology seemed impossible to accept, but they had all seen the recordings from the Battle of Sol. 3,000 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, reduced to floating debris in less than 4 hours. The human solar system had become a graveyard containing the remains of 17 different species' most powerful fleets. Chief Strategist Dong-Hyun Kim stepped forward, carrying a datapad filled with information that made the alien representatives nervous just by looking at it. Everyone knew that human datapads contained things like weapon specifications and invasion plans disguised as scientific research. The new order is not complicated, Dong-Hyun announced. Species that respect the rights of developing civilizations will be left alone to pursue their own interests. Species that continue to exploit primitive worlds will discover that humanity has solutions to that problem. He activated his datapad, and the chamber's screens filled with star maps showing the current locations of human surveillance networks throughout council space. Red dots marked weapons caches, monitoring stations, and defensive positions that had been secretly placed over the past 50 years. As you can see, Dong-Hyun continued, we are prepared to enforce these regulations anywhere in the galaxy at any time. An Athaki representative, its gas form swirling with agitation, spoke through its translator. Are you saying that you will attack us if we refuse to follow your rules? Ye Jin smiled, and somehow that expression was more frightening than any threat could have been. We are saying that we have already prepared solutions for every possible scenario. Whether we need to use them depends entirely on your choices. The terrible truth hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Humanity had not just won a single battle. They had positioned themselves to win any future conflict before it even began. Their weapons were already in place throughout council space, waiting for activation signals that could be sent at any moment. Overlord Vekmar, a Gorthak who had survived the destruction of his fleet by surrendering quickly, raised a shaking hand. What about our existing mining operations in systems that are now protected zones? You have 90 days to relocate them, Ye Jin replied. After that, any unauthorized activities in protected space will be considered acts of war against developing species under human protection. The chamber erupted in protests. 90 days was not nearly enough time to relocate massive mining operations that had been running for centuries. The economic disruption would be enormous. This is impossible, shouted a Valdorian trade representative. Our entire economy depends on resource extraction from those systems. You are asking us to rebuild our civilization in 3 months. No, Ye Jin said quietly. We are giving you 90 days to prove that galactic civilization can exist without destroying weaker species. If you cannot do that, then perhaps galactic civilization as it currently exists is not worth preserving. The silence that followed was complete. Every alien in the chamber realized that the humans were not negotiating. They were announcing the new reality that everyone else would have to live with. Dr. Minho Cho activated another section of his holographic display, showing economic projections and alternative resource acquisition methods that human analysts had developed. The transition is not impossible, he said, trying to offer some hope to his fellow council members. Human economists have identified 17 different ways to maintain current production levels, using resources from uninhabited systems and artificial manufacturing. Human economists, Veltar repeated, his crystal body flickering with what might have been bitter amusement. Of course you have already planned our entire economic future for us. Ye Jin nodded without embarrassment. We have been planning for this outcome since our first contact with the Council. Every aspect of galactic civilization has been studied, and alternatives have been prepared. We can provide you with detailed transition plans for any species that wishes to cooperate. The word cooperate hung in the air with all its implied meanings. Species that cooperated would receive human help in rebuilding their economies and technologies. Species that did not cooperate would discover what had happened to the Council's military might. As the session continued, it became clear that humanity had thought of everything. They had prepared economic alternatives, political structures, and military solutions for every possible response to their demands. The new galactic order was not something they were building, it was something they had already built, and were now implementing. Young Counselor Brixtel of the Thraxis, who had only recently inherited her position after the death of her predecessor at Sol, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What else have you prepared for? What other scenarios do you have solutions for? Ye Jin's smile became warmer but also more terrifying. Counselor, we are humans. We prepare for everything. She gestured to her aide, who activated a final holographic display. This one showed a timeline stretching hundreds of years into the future, with branching paths showing different possible outcomes for galactic civilization. War with the Council races, Ye Jin read from the display. Economic collapse following resource depletion, first contact with extragalactic species, internal rebellion among Council members, natural disasters affecting major populated worlds, technological singularities, the emergence of new intelligent species. She looked around the chamber at the increasingly worried faces of the alien representatives. Every scenario has been analyzed. Every possible future has been planned for. We hope that the future will be peaceful and prosperous for all species. But if it is not, we are ready. As the session ended and the alien delegates filed out of the chamber, Ye Jin remained behind. With her human staff, they had achieved something that no species in galactic history had ever managed. They had changed the fundamental rules of civilization itself without firing a shot in anger. The galaxy was now a different place. Not because humanity had conquered it, but because they had made it clear that conquest was no longer possible for anyone. The age of stronger species dominating weaker ones was over, replaced by a new age where intelligence and preparation mattered more than raw power. Outside the Council station, human ships moved through space with the quiet confidence of apex predators who no longer needed to hunt. They patrolled the new boundaries, monitored the transition zones, and waited patiently for the next challenge that would require a solution they had been preparing for decades. The Galactic Council had learned too late that when humans made promises about consequences, they were never bluffing. They were simply stating mathematical certainties that had been calculated long in advance. Peace had returned to the galaxy, not the peace of the strong ruling the weak, but the peace of knowing that crossing humanity would result in consequences, too swift and complete to contemplate. In the end, the Council's greatest mistake had been thinking that humans wanted to join their civilization. What humans had actually wanted was to replace it with something better. And now they had.